we require the subcommittee to appoint a chair, please.
Brian Collins.
Second that.
Collins would like to in the chair.
Thank you. Can we just go to the Sederunt apologies, please? Thanks, Claire.
Chairman, Councillor Ian Carruthers is not present today. We have 6 members present. Sorry, 5 members. So 6. Can't count. Sorry, Councillor Brody. 6 members present at this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, declaration of interest. I would just mention my membership of Sederunt in relation to page 14, item 5.4.4. As per PH&E, but I don't see any reason to leave the meeting or exclude myself on that basis. Thank you, Alistair. Ditto. Richard, ditto. Okay, thank you. On to item 4 on the agenda, minute of the meeting of 6th of September. Proposed and second for that minute, thanks. Driver. Okay, Tom. Yep, thanks very much. And item 5 on the agenda, review of schemes of delegation. I would propose working our way through the recommendations, starting at 2.1, making reference to 4.2 of the paper. Any members, any questions, matters arising from that? Sorry, can I ask, first of all, Alec, do you have anything you'd like to add to the report at this time?
Nothing to add to the report. Chairman, if it's okay with you, I would deal with the issues as you've proposed to raise them. And can I say in terms of 4.23, what's before members is an issue raised by officers. I know that in previous meetings there was reference made to environmental standards, trading standards and community safety reporting to either the Community and Customer Service Committee itself or a subcommittee of that committee. There was a previous reference, members had a view at that time when we were running into the single police force and single fire authority that you'd want very much to keep a police and fire and rescue subcommittee. I'm really in members' hands for that one. What officers did was make a suggestion there. It's merely that. I know there are many decisions. Certainly in terms of environmental standards and trading standards, I'd wish to include that into the remit of the Customer Services Committee, and it would be for that committee to determine if it wanted to have a subcommittee dealing specifically with environment services, trading standards and community safety, depending on the amount of work that was coming forward. But I would certainly make that amendment to the report, and I'm in members' hands about whether you retain the Police and Fire subcommittee.
Thank you. Tom?
I think if you go back to the minute of the 11th of March, I think we're actually in an agreed position there that full council should have a police and fire rescue subcommittee, membership of 11 based on proportionality. I think Claire's got the minute there. I think we should stick to that because we've already appointed the chair and vice chair of that committee. Now, I realise there may well be things happening at the managerial level later on next year. So rather than strike this committee at this moment in time, I'd leave it as is. It's actually meeting again tomorrow, believe it or not. I think there's something else planned after that meeting. So I think if we leave it as is with the remit given at that meeting on the 11th of March, and obviously with regard to we did agree at the May meeting about the trading standards and environmental health reporting to the new Community and Customer Services Committee. That was a minute decision then. I think we do that way. That gives a bit of clarity for the next few months anyway.
Thank you. I think all members are content with that. Richard?
Yeah, if you're still looking for a name for the, we're still looking for a name for the Fez, what it's called, yeah. So I'll make a suggestion, a very radical suggestion. Well, it's revolutionary because it goes back to the old days whenever you couldn't think of a title for a committee, you called it the General Purposes Committee. And if there was one theme which was more important than others, then you could add something else. And we had the District Council, we had the Finance and General Purposes Committee, which was shot into F and GP Committee. So I was the chair of the F and GP Committee. So you might want to call it Regeneration and General Purposes Committee. That's my suggestion.
Thank you. Colin?
It's not the top issue of the day, I have to say, but I've got a kind of vested interest in this, seeing as I keep getting introduced as the chair of planning, which causes me all sorts of difficulties, because people bend my ear saying about plan applications. I think it's important that we take out planning. Also, housing's got a standalone committee itself, albeit PH&E still deals with the strategic issues. There's a couple of suggestions that came forward, certainly to me. I think the one important thing to include is around the issues of economic development. I think that's seen as the top priority of the new administration, and we have to, I think, send a clear signal, given the fact that this department deals with that. Two suggestions that have been put forward: take out planning and housing, you're left with environment services. The two suggestions are economic, environment and infrastructure committee, or the other one was enterprise, environment and infrastructure committee. I don't know if the word economic on its own actually makes sense. I don't know. But the enterprise one probably does. But so it was economic, environment and infrastructure committee, or an enterprise, environment and infrastructure committee. Doesn't get it any shorter, unfortunately, but it is a wide committee.
Okay, thank you. Members, any other suggestions? We have three already on the paper here under 4.2.1. We've got Regeneration, Infrastructure and Environment Committee, or Economic and Environment Committee, which isn't terribly far removed from one from Colin, or Economic Regeneration and Sustainable Development. Ian?
Thanks, Chairman. Sorry, apologies for being late. The only comment on that, I know my papers are but reading it was, I think the Strategic Housing Authority, do we need to keep housing in there somewhere? I think it's something we should look at. It's a very important part, but I do believe that the local and regional economy is every bit as important. We don't have anything like the same role we used to play when it comes to housing. So that strategic role, that overarching role, so we do. Regeneration, fundamental. I mean, I think it was your first proposal that's in the papers that I've not opened them up again from memory, but I did think housing was worth debating in regards to, felt that it's still a critical part of our remit.
I think there's a general recognition that the fact that we have a housing subcommittee does take account of the housing remit that does still remain and will continue to remain with the council into the future. And I think Alistair, from going back many moons ago, is still asked about housing in the Mackers in the district council, let alone anything else, was dissolved and the housing remit passed on. So there is some confusion out there still regard that. Anyway, we seem to be getting pretty split across the various options here, and I'd like to close it down to one or two, preferably one acceptable title for the replacement of PH&E as the current name for the committee. Ian?
I suppose in the back of your comments there, Chairman, I think the third bullet point is probably my first preference out of the three, but it's not to say we can't, if we didn't come up with some kind of ingenious ideas by the time this gets to full council, we couldn't put them forward, but my preference would be economic regeneration, sustainable development.
Again, I think that's very close to the suggestion that Colin came forward with. Would you like to just expand on that, Colin?
Yeah, there was two suggestions. The first was Economic, Environment and Infrastructure Committee, and the second one was Enterprise, Environment and Infrastructure Committee. I'm probably slightly more inclined towards the second one purely. I don't know if the word economic on its own actually makes sense. Economic development makes sense, but the word economic on its own might not. I don't know. In terms of regen, I think that's a big part of it, but it's not the only part of it in terms of job creation stuff. Regeneration is obviously a sort of physical schemes, and I think that's kind of partly covered by the phrase infrastructure. I think the whole employability, economic side of things is obviously seen as a big priority of the new administration, so I'm keen that that's actually send a clear signal. So I would be inclined more towards Enterprise, Environment and Infrastructure Committee.
Thank you. Alistair?
Well, you know, the last thing I would want to do, conscious of the fact that it wouldn't necessarily do anything for a reputational standing, you know, to be spending, you know, an hour and a half, you know, sort of debating, getting involved in semantical discussion. I would have to say that you know, enterprise, you know, to me connotes only an aspect of economic development, and I would like to see, if at all possible, the term economic development in the title. Inevitably, of course, that would be economic development, you know, environment and infrastructure. As has been pointed out by my colleague here on the right, it's a pity there are no UKIPers, because EEC, Economic and Environment Committee, would be a nice acronym for them. But seriously, we've got to come to a decision and quickly, Chair.
That sounded a bit as though the honest was getting thrown back at me there, Alistair. But okay, the one that seems to be gathering greater interest is the reference to enterprise and economic development. Can we agree that those are the key elements that we're looking to follow up on? Enterprise and economic development. Anything to add? Ian?
I just think I think it's absolutely essential that infrastructure must be in there, because that's one of our largest remits within that committee. So whether it's a split between economic and enterprise, I love the word enterprise because it tallies up politically very much with my own politics, but economic envelopes everything. Everything comes under economic. So I think economic, for the sake of the council, maybe, it was certainly one of the... I think it's as much as the administration's goals and aspirations and commitments, it is the whole council's goals, aspirations and commitments as well. I think everybody should be aligned to this, ascendantly, and when it comes to economic development across Dumfries and Galloway. I'm sure every other member is in this room, so I think, personally, economic, just in front of enterprise, but infrastructure must be.
Chair of Economic, Environment and Infrastructure Committee. Instead of having a D in it, because it does, as I say, spell EDIC. Keen on being the chair of the EDIC committee, but that's so it's Economic, Environment and Infrastructure Committee.
All members content with that? Okay, thank you. That's recommendation 2.1. 4.2.2 remit of area committees. The draft scheme has been updated. Any members, any queries around that? Alistair?
No so much a query, Chair, but just to reinforce the comments that area committees do indeed have a key role in the scrutiny of local service delivery, including police and fire and rescue services. And the quicker that's recognised, and more importantly, provisions made for it to be acted upon in a meaningful fashion, the better. So hopefully what we're proposing will address that.
Thank you. Members happy with that? Thank you. 4.2.4, the proposed delegation to the Community and Customer Services Committee is set out in the appendix. And they're broadly in line with the departmental business of Community and Customer Service. Members content with that?
Sir, having regard to what you said in terms of paragraph 4.2.3, we'll add in economic, it's in my head now, we'll add in environmental services and trading standards, or whatever they're now called. We'll add that in.
Ian?
Well, it used to be me being new to this. I remember previously substituting once, and Tom came out with a particular comment in Public Protection Committee. What was the change? Why did the change come about? Because I thought the Public Protection Committee was quite a good idea, and this kind of subsumes that against Community and Customer Services Committee. So why was that changed?
Sorry, sir, we dealt with that already. We're not putting police and fire into this Public Protection Elite Community Service Committee. Community and Customer Service Committee will have the remit it's got in the paper, plus environmental and trading standards, plus the community safety agenda. Police and fire and rescue will remain as is.
Okay, thank you. So on to 2.2, agree the revised scheme of administration delegation committees is submitted for approval, full council as detailed at the appendix.
For assistance, Chairman, the changes that members have already agreed are in bold type.
Ivor?
Wondering, could you remind me why we decided that we would name community and customer services within the scrutiny delegation under 563 and 567 and other committees? Should it not just be all of the committees?
I'm conscious that I'm a former chairman of the Scrutiny and Performance Committee. My understanding is that all committees are meant to scrutinise the functions and services that they provide. The Scrutiny and Performance Committee is specifically holding the Council's policy decisions to account, and the Council's policy decisions will be taken by Policy and Resources, or I don't know if you're going to change that to just policy. And Community and Customer Services, they will be the main policy committees, and that was the intention, was that Scrutiny and Performance, and I'm looking specifically at Councillor Geddes just to make sure that I've got that right, because that's certainly my understanding, that scrutiny is done in area committees, it's done in service committees, but when you come to scrutinising the Council and its policy delivery and policy direction, that's where the Scrutiny and Performance Committee comes in.
I would certainly share that understanding, Chairman.
Thank you, Ian. Sorry, Ivor, you want back in?
It was just another point under 5.9.3. It asks input to any major and local consultations having regard to the national standard. Just going back to a meeting we had with regard to common goods, having regard to doesn't mean to follow. Can we just have clarity? What does it mean in there?
Yes. That's maybe the lawyer coming out in me, sir. I think there may be occasions when if you tie yourself to following the national standards for community engagement, you might find yourself doing a major exercise for a fairly small piece of work. I think it would be for member determination on each occasion whether you were going to apply the full standards or whether you were going to look at abbreviating them. There is no requirement on the local authority to apply these standards. They're a voluntary thing.
On the same subject, Carl? Yep.
I think, Leader, sorry, I beg pardon, I think, Chair, that's very sound advice. I think, obviously, we're all signing up to the concept, but at the end of the day, we should allow ourselves the maximum amount of flexibility, ensuring, in fact, that we are genuine, we're serious, and we're thrilled and committed to this. We haven't always, I mean, in the past, on occasions, I regret to say, we've talked a good game, and we haven't translated that into, meaningful action. And the time is long overdue when we've got to do that. But I do take Mr. Hasl's comments, and I think they're well founded.
Thank you. Ian?
I was just trying to get my head around about 5.6.3 because on the back of what Ivor just said, Community Customer Service Policy and Resource Committee. I mean, do you think that still the Plan, House and Environment Committee, the Local Development Plan, you couldn't get anywhere policies, and I mean it's full of different policies that we have. in regards to whether it's planning policy, but with loads of, whether it's train start, may that be moving. So are we tying ourselves down just to them two particular committees to scrutinise, or are we still doing it across the board? I know there's talk about keeping it near the committees and such like, but what does that actually mean? I just want to know exactly what you've said there, Alec.
I take the point, sir. I think the Scrutiny and Performance Committee will reserve the right to invite, I think it's the correct term, services to come along and address it on specific aspects of it. The planning PHES, as it is, policies are pertinent to PHES, and it's for members on that committee to scrutinise and ensure that the policies which they've adopted are being delivered properly. If the Scrutiny and Performance Committee determined that they wanted to look at a specific policy coming or emanating from PHES, as it is just now, their remit is wide enough to enable them to do that. But we wanted to make sure that there was a specific remit in there that they were holding the council and its policy committee and its major committees to account as to what they were doing. That is one of the reasons why I think the new committee is actually made up of opposition members. So this is totally in line with the decisions which the council have recently taken.
Colin?
Just can I just explain what's the difference between? I mean, I can understand why it specifies Policy and Resources Committee, because you've explained that. But what's the difference between the new Community and Customer Services Committee and, say, Education or FES or anybody else? Because I think it should specify Policy and Resources Committee, but then and other committees. So that then covers. My understanding is that we've set up a new service committee, Community and Customer Services, and therefore it should maybe just take that out and just say Policy and Resources and other committees, because that I don't see the difference between Community and Customer Services and Education or Social Work and anybody else, unless there is a reason that I've just missed. And there's another slight point in 4.11.4, which is a number of political groups. We obviously need to amend that. Probably just as well not to put a number in there, because it's quite a moving feast sometimes.
No, Chairman, I highlighted that. It's obviously that was a previous decision when we had 5 political groupings, more than 5 now. That'll need to be changed for the full council.
Because we'd have to keep amending standing orders every time we had a change in the number of groups. But if we just keep it out, then at least it covers all possibilities.
Thank you. Tom?
I think just following from Colin's point about 5.6.3 and 5.6.7, I don't even need to mention any committees by name, quite frankly. You know, just to hold all committees of the council to account, because that is the role of the scrutiny committee, to hold everybody to account. So I don't think you have to specifically name any committees.
I take the point entirely, Chairman, about Community and Customer Services. I think the Policy Committee is the main policy-making committee. It is the main decision-making committee of the Council, and I think it does take primacy. It holds the purse strings. It's responsible for a number of issues, and I think you can take it out and just say all committees, but we try to highlight the fact that this is holding the Policy Committee, which is the Council, to account.
Thank you. Alistair?
I would certainly agree with that, sir. I think it's absolutely imperative that you retain the reference to the Policy and Resources Committee, Chair, on the basis of flagging up to all concerned that, you know, there is a particular relationship between the Scrutiny and Performance Committee and the Policy and Resources Committee. Okay, the Scrutiny Committee's remit is much wider than that. We all agree that. But I think it's, you know, if you take out the reference to Policy and Resources, you're blurring the focus, and it's all too easy with the passage of time to lose sight of this particular relationship the Scrutiny and Performance Committee has with the committee, which is primacy, as Mr. Hazel has said, and the remaining function and structure of the Council. While I am at the microphone, sir, with your leave, very minor point which I would draw your attention to. It's on page 19. If you look there at paragraph 4.5, it talks about civic government licensing panels, 19 members, hearings comprising of 7 panel members with a quorum of 5. If you go to 4.4, it talks about local review body with a membership of 5. drawn case by case on a rota basis from 19 members of the Planning Applications Committee. There's no reference made there to the quorum of 3. I would suggest, Chairman, that that should be amended to make it clear that the local review body has a membership of 5 with a quorum of 3 drawn case by case, and it tidies up a minor point.
Sorry, just returning to 5.6.3, are we happy to reduce that from resources, striking out that the and that follows resources, to hold the policy and resources, and picking up after committees or service committees on the second line and other committees to account for developing and implementing policy? So the complete sentence would read to hold the policy and resources and other committees to account for developing and implementing policy. That's what settling. Okay. Right, thank you. We move on now to 2.3. Consider whether or not to recommend to full council that the Ad Hoc Welfare Reform Subcommittee is established as a standing subcommittee of the Policy and Resources Committee as detailed at section 6. Any members, any questions around that? Ian?
I think we're only really getting into welfare reform and the impact that could have. I didn't see any reason why we shouldn't set that up as a standing committee. That's my own personal view on that. I don't think there's anything obstructive in doing that, and I think it keeps a close eye and focus on the actual impacts of welfare reform and gives the council a chance to react as quickly and as positively as it possibly can.
Yeah, thank you. I think the way things are moving, or not, as the case may be, in terms of welfare reform, that we know there are pressures and changes coming down the line, and that a level of consistency in how we address and deal with and best understand what those are is or would be helpful. So a continuance of that subcommittee. Alistair?
Agree entirely with that, sir. Thank you.
Colin?
So we're right, it's no longer an ad hoc subcommittee, we're asking. Keep it going as long as it takes to introduce universal credit. It'll take about 30 years.
Thank you. Alec?
If members are supposed to do that, it would be my proposal that the Welfare Reform Subcommittee of Policy and Resources would have the power to determine expenditure. At the moment, if the Welfare Reform Subcommittee makes a decision, it's a recommendation only. This would be giving the Welfare Reform Subcommittee the power. If members are so disposed, you could retain the power as remaining with P&R, but the intention would be to look at the logical follow-on is what would the remit of the Welfare Reform Subcommittee be, and we would put that to full council. And one of the things would be, if you're prepared to recommend it, that it would have spending powers.
Thank you. Colin?
I'm sympathetic to that. Obviously, it can't spend money that's not been allocated by Policy and Resources, so we'd have to put the money that's allocated. But we've got a kind of situation coming up soon where it's got £262,000 to determine how it's going to allocate funding in relation to welfare reform. But whatever decision the ad hoc subcommittee makes will then have to get referred back to Policy and Resources. And the nature of welfare reform is that sometimes support might be needed quicker. So I think I would be very sympathetic to that idea.
Thank you. Ian?
And I mean, that's pretty much in parallel with the Housing Committee in regards to PH&E at the moment, isn't it? It has fully delegated authority to, if there's money there to spend it. It has to the private sector housing grants, so I would line with that.
Alistair?
I wouldn't want to be accused of, trying to arrogate powers to that subcommittee, but again, in the back of what Mr. Hazel and colleagues have said, I think it's a logical development.
Okay, thank you. Moving on now to 2.4. Under the recommendations, note Council's opinion as detailed at 5.3 and consider whether or not to recommend to the full Council that all subcommittees have a membership of 11 as detailed at 5.5. Tom?
Yeah, I think, I mean, something we've done, predecessor council have done, is adopted proportionality, but it's not set down in law, but hopefully we'd adhere to that at the moment. I think the question about subcommittees having a membership of 11 bear in mind, we have actually some committees that only have 11 members. So I think you're well to leave subcommittees as they are within standing orders, and that's open to decision by the relevant committee. In actual fact, if you set up a 9-man subcommittee, that would be able to include every group. But I think it depends on the subject you're going to deal with, how many folk you want to have there. So sometimes having a wee tight subcommittee of 5 folk for a short term is all you need. Another time you might want to have 9 people, but be very wary of having an 11-man subcommittee, because that would comprise a majority of a 19-member committee. So you might as well give them delegated powers if you're going to make it an 11-man subcommittee, which rather defeats the purpose. So I think I'd just leave it open. Leave it open as it is at the moment. I didn't see any need to have it cast in tablets of stone.
Thank you. Ian?
I suppose listening to Tom there, I mean, I've got certainly sympathy with that, but I mean, previously, within my own group, we made a decision as a group at the time and went with a different proportionality, different numbers on committees at the time. But my own view personally was we should have it at minimum 11 that way for being inclusive across the whole council. It doesn't do away with member officer working groups, this by any means. So if the council administration feels that they need to have a lesser involvement, it'd be non-decision making, but it would certainly inform policy and reports that come forward. Still, there's still member officer working groups up and running at the moment, in particular the local development plan, which was never ever brought back into fruition since the new council came in. But I'm minded to think that I've not got any problems with 11. Again, it's inclusive. I don't see how it would. Not say they should have fully delegated powers to them, but not that much bother with it. But I think I'd be okay with 11.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? So we have a proposal, I suppose, for 11 and a suggestion of remaining with the status quo.
So standing orders. Standing order 3.2. Standing subcommittees will be established with the approval of the council. Service committees may establish single issue ad hoc committees. Now, the only thing you're looking at with regard to main committees would be single issue ad hoc committees. And the point I'm making there is, it would depend on the subject you're wanting to undertake. If you want to be inclusive, a 9-man subcommittee includes every group, including the non-aligned. 7 would exclude the non-aligned, 5 would probably exclude certain others. But I think it depends on what subject you're looking at, how quick you want to have a response. And I don't think we need to tie it down to a specific number. I'm very wary of having a subcommittee of 11 members, which is a majority of the committee. That kind of defeats the purpose of having a subcommittee. I don't think it's good practice to have a subcommittee which can effectively rule the main committee. Because if 11 folk all agree on something, and they go back to the committee, and the other 8 folk have disagreed, defeated the purpose.
Yeah, I tend to accept that the status quo has been working. I don't see any reason to change that. Ian?
I'll only make a comment in regards to, if it is a subcommittee with delegated authority, then it's not, and it's less than, maybe it was 9, I thought it was 11, but maybe Tom's picked it up right, and it's actually 9, has full proportionality basis on it. If it is a subcommittee with fully delegated powers of authority, then therefore it would exclude some of the members on the council, whether that's this committee feels that that's appropriate to recommend to the full council or not. But so long as if it's got fully delegated powers, I would say that's even more reason why we should be fully inclusive. If it hasn't got fully delegated powers, you should refer back to committee and fair point.
The delegation to the committee would be originated from the parent committee, so that would be a determination for the parent committee in that remit to give. I think if we're going to be inclusive across the piece, the way the members are talking, then all 47 members should be in all committee. Tom?
Yeah, there's 2 separate subcommittees you've got to remember. Main committees can't set up a subcommittee without permission of the council, right? But a main committee can set up an ad hoc subcommittee to look at one subject. You know, education, for instance, could set up a subcommittee to look at increased learning down. That is the only thing that subcommittee could look at. The education committee can give them that right. It's an ad hoc subcommittee. If the education committee want to establish a subcommittee to look at secondary education combined with further education across the region, we would have to get permission from the council to do that. So that's your standing order 3.2. You've also got standing order 6, which covers standing subcommittees. And it's established subcommittees of 11 members. We have already got standing subcommittees of 11 members, which is the Pension Fund Subcommittee, the Crichton Subcommittee, third one. And we've also got the Employment Appeals Subcommittee, which has actually been made up. It was 11 members with 11 subs. The recommendation for that one is to have 19 members when it's meeting to make appointments, to decide policy. And it would have a subcommittee of 7 to deal with employment appeals, because it felt that 7 was a big enough number of councillors to be sitting around the table when somebody's coming with an appeal against dismissal or whatever else. So you've got 2 different types of subcommittees. You've got standing subcommittees, which that is enshrined in the standing orders. It will have 11 members, with these exceptions of the Employment Appeals Subcommittee. Any other subcommittee is an ad hoc subcommittee for one subject of the Service Committee, and I would leave it to the Service Committee to determine how many members they want to put on.
I would happily support that. Any other members otherwise minded? Okay. Thank you. We go to recommendation 2.5. Note the remaining items for consideration by the subcommittee as detailed in section 7. Mr. Haswell, is there anything you would like to put in at this point?
No, there's a few thorny issues there, I'm afraid, Chairman. The main issues are the scheme of delegation to officers, which is a huge piece of work. We are working our way through it. I think we started to look at that 2 years ago, Claire, am I right? The revised scheme for representation outside bodies, and we've already had a preliminary report to the subcommittee on that. We will be coming back to members with it, and governance and reporting arrangements for council-led forums and groups. We'll come back to that. There is an outstanding council's opinion which we yet to receive, but it deals with a notice of motion, and we will come back to members when we get that report from council.
Thanks very much. Can I suggest that possibly at this point in time, with the pending budget process and such like that we are all entered into, or at least I would hope we are, that it would be appropriate to suspend this committee until after that budget process is complete, and hopefully some of the information that's not available at this point in time would be then available to take forward the remit of this committee at that time. Tom?
I'd happily second that, Chairman. I think if we look at 7.1, 7.2 and 7.3, they should be carried forward until probably March of next year, I would think, at this stage, because you're right about the budget. That's going to take up the next 3 months. On 7.4, Council's opinion amending Standing Order 13, i.e. notices of motion, that concerns the withdrawal of delegation, etc. That is one, if we're seeking Council's advice, obviously that's been put in train. I think the result of that can either A, be reported to the Policy Committee or full Council, whichever is appropriate. I don't think that needs to wait for the subcommittee to meet again.
Mr. Haswell?
I think what I'm hoping will come back from Jonathan Mitchell will be an exposition of the law, and I think we could deal with that through Policy and Resources Committee. I think the issue that's been raised is the idea of if a notice of motion to the full council isn't accepted and delegation is not withdrawn, that the notice of motion then automatically goes to a committee. I have my own views on the legality of that, and I think that standing orders are framed in such a way that should not be a legal course of action which this council can take. But John Mitchell is looking at it for us, and John will come back. What I would do is I'd maybe speak to the group, this subcommittee individually, once I get that opinion, and see if you're of the view we just take it straight to Policy and Resources, or if you want to have a quick meeting. If that were acceptable anyway, Chairman.
Thanks very much, Alec. So, Alistair?
No quibbles whatsoever, sir, with what's been proposed, but can I just ask briefly, if I may, you've talked about 7.2 there, revised scheme for representation in outside bodies to include only those set up and administered by the council. I take it the raison d'etre for that, for want of a better term, is to provide a greater degree of surety and assurance to elected members who are put into these organisations, because if that's, and I see Mr Hazel nodding in assent, I could not agree more with that, quite frankly.
I don't think you'd have anyone else dissenting from that. Okay, members content that the next meeting will be picked up after the budget process, would be around March. Ian?
Happy with that, Chair. So what happens with everything in between times? Is it held in limbo until such time as we come back? Or is there a further report going back to full council beforehand, or what happens there?
Alec?
Chairman, we'll be going to full council with this report on the 28th of November. The council's duty bound to review its standing orders once a year. I think that will have fulfilled that remit, because we normally go to a December meeting with an officer report. On this occasion, we're going to the November meeting with a recommendation from elected members, which I think is a very good thing. So we would put the report, based on your deliberations over the period, to full council. Hopefully full council adopt the recommendations from the subcommittee, and we'll be told that the subcommittee will resume its consideration of the other 3 items as and when the budget process is completed. No, it would be, probably would go for a meeting in March sometime, sir.
Okay, if that's all, I've got no other business. Thanks very much, members.